The following program contains graphic descriptions of violence and may include disturbing content. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Evil Exposed Killers. Tonight we reveal the terrifying story of Kendall Francois, a man who turned his family home into a house of horrors. Known as the Poughkeepsie Predator, Francois murdered 8 women between 1996 and 1998, hiding their bodies in plain sight, right under the noses of his unsuspecting family. What could drive a man to commit such grotesque acts? And how did he go unnoticed for so long? Let's step into the mind of Kendall Francois to uncover the darkness lurking within. Kendall Francois was born on July 26, 1971, in Poughkeepsie, New York, the first child in what seemed like an ordinary family. He was raised in a modest home in a quiet neighborhood. His father worked as a bus driver, and his mother held down a job as a nurse's aide. On the surface, the Francois family appeared to be hard-working and relatively unremarkable. But the signs of trouble were there from early on, particularly with Kendall. As a child, Kendall was large for his age, both tall and overweight, which set him apart from his peers. He struggled in school, often ridiculed by other children for his size and his poor hygiene. Francois was shy, awkward, and introverted, finding it difficult to connect with people, especially women. He became a target for bullying, which only deepened his sense of isolation. He found it hard to make friends, and as he grew older, this isolation turned into a bubbling resentment toward those around him, particularly women. Francois's relationship with his family was also strained. He lived with his parents and 2 younger siblings, and the house itself was in a state of disrepair, filthy, cluttered, and neglected. His hygiene problems grew worse as he got older, a point of contention between him and his family. Despite this, he was never known to cause significant trouble. He wasn't violent as a child, nor did he show outward signs of the horrors to come. After high school, Kendall Francois enlisted in the U.S. Army, hoping perhaps to find some structure in his life. But his time in the military was brief and undistinguished. He was discharged after just a few years, and upon returning home to Poughkeepsie, he slipped back into his old routines. His prospects were limited, and he found work as a school hall monitor, a job that required little social interaction and kept him under the radar. But beneath the surface, something darker was stirring. By the mid-1990s, Francois's relationship with women had taken a deeply disturbing turn. He began frequenting Poughkeepsie's red light districts, picking up sex workers under the guise of seeking their services. He developed a twisted sense of power and control over these vulnerable women. In his mind, they were disposable, women who wouldn't be missed if they suddenly disappeared. These thoughts festered until eventually, he acted on them. In 1996, Kendall Francois committed his first murder. He lured a woman back to his family's home on Fulton Avenue, a deteriorating house filled with the smell of decay and neglect. Once inside, Francois attacked her, strangling her with his bare hands. But what made his crimes even more grotesque was what he did afterward. Rather than disposing of her body, he hid it in the house. There, he continued to live, eat, and sleep, just feet away from the decomposing remains of his victim. This was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, Francois would lure more women into his home, each meeting the same horrific fate. His methods were consistent. He strangled them to death and then kept their bodies hidden in various parts of the house. He used the attic and basement as makeshift burial sites, even as the smell of death began to permeate the entire house. His family noticed the foul odor, but Francois always had an excuse: a dead animal, plumbing issues, anything to deflect suspicion. Incredibly, his family never ventured into the parts of the house where the bodies were hidden. Despite the growing number of disappearances in Poughkeepsie, Kendall Francois managed to evade suspicion. He was even questioned by police multiple times, but he presented himself as cooperative, offering explanations that were enough to deflect attention. His large frame and unkempt appearance might have made him an odd figure in the community, but no one suspected that this quiet, unremarkable man was hiding a horrifying secret. The bodies of his victims, however, were piling up. By the summer of 1998, Kendall Francois had killed 8 women. The house on Fulton Avenue had become a tomb, filled with the remains of those whose lives he had brutally taken. The smell of death was now so strong that it was impossible to ignore, but Francois continued to make excuses, deflecting attention from himself whenever his family asked about the odor. The case took a critical turn in September 1998, when one of Francois's intended victims managed to escape. She had been lured into his home like so many before her, but during the attack, she fought back and fled the house. Terrified and bruised, she ran to the police and told them everything about Francois, the attack, and how she had barely escaped with her life. This testimony provided the breakthrough authorities had been desperately searching for. Armed with this new information, the police obtained a search warrant for Francois's house. On September 2nd, 1998, investigators entered the residence at 99 Fulton Avenue. The smell of decay hit them immediately, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to find. As they searched the attic and basement, they uncovered the decomposed bodies of 8 women, some in advanced stages of decomposition. It was a scene of unimaginable horror. The police arrested Kendall Francois on the spot. His calm demeanor remained even as the bodies of his victims were removed from the house. He offered little resistance and appeared almost indifferent to the discovery of the bodies. For the authorities, it was a mix of relief and horror. They had caught the man responsible for the disappearances, but the sheer brutality of his crimes was overwhelming. Once in custody, Francois confessed to the murders. His confessions were as chilling as his actions. He admitted to killing 8 women, all of whom he had strangled after luring them into his home. He described the murders in disturbing detail, showing no remorse for his victims. To him, these women were nothing more than objects to be used and discarded. The investigation also revealed how close Francois had come to being caught several times. He had been questioned by police on multiple occasions during the investigation into the missing women, but his cooperative attitude and calm demeanor had allowed him to deflect suspicion. Even his family had no idea of the atrocities that were being committed under their roof, despite the overwhelming evidence of something terribly wrong. The trial of Kendall Francois began in early 2000. During the proceedings, the gruesome details of his crimes were laid bare, shocking the public and leaving the families of his victims devastated. The courtroom was filled with emotion as the relatives of the murdered women recounted the pain of losing their loved ones in such a horrifying manner. Francois, however, remained largely emotionless throughout the trial, his cold demeanor a stark contrast to the devastation he had caused. In August 2000, Kendall Francois was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was sent to Attica Correctional Facility, where he would spend the remainder of his days. Despite the weight of his crimes, Francois continued to show little remorse for his actions, maintaining the same eerie calm that had characterized him throughout his killing spree. In September 2014, after serving 14 years in prison, Kendall Francois died of natural causes at the age of 43. His death brought a final end to one of the darkest chapters in Poughkeepsie's history, but the scars left by his crimes remain. For the families of his victims, the pain and trauma of losing their loved ones in such a brutal way will never fully heal. Kendall Francois was a man who lived among us, hiding his darkness in plain sight. His ability to lead a seemingly normal life while committing such horrific acts serves as a grim reminder of the evil that can sometimes hide behind the most ordinary of masks. His death in prison may have brought an end to his story, but the pain and devastation he left behind will never be forgotten. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay safe. Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe to Evil Exposed for more riveting stories.